Hello and welcome to another episode of Marlins Monday. My name is Eric Wiedeke. As always, you can follow me on X/Twitter at Eric Wiedeke. It is Monday, June 23rd, 2025, and it was a 3-4 week for your Marlins last week, dropping a 4-game set to the Phillies before rebounding at home and taking 2 out of 3 versus the Atlanta Braves. But it's a lot to talk about this week. Firstly, I do want to talk about beating the Braves in the series because I do think that it was a really quality win. Jansen Junk had I think all three of your starting pitchers actually pitched really well. Between Junk, Yuri, and Sandy, which I think when you look at that on top of what you've got with Edward Cabrera, who gave you a really solid start in the last game versus Philadelphia. We're going to get into that. I think with the pitching staff, you have to feel pretty encouraged by what you saw this past week, as you've gotten 4 guys that have given you really quality starts, and guys that are really kind of rounding into form. Sandy's been much better of late. Yuri, I think, again, he looked really good versus the Braves there for stretches. Cabrera's been fantastic. And Jansen Junk, I mean, you guys see the title. We're going to talk about it later. I think he's pushing for a permanent spot in this rotation with the things that he's been doing of late. But the other thing that I do want to talk about is the offense, and it hasn't been bad. It hasn't been great either, but with the pitching that you've been getting from this Marlins team, it's been passable, and it's been passable because you've had a few guys that have all been kind of streaking at the same time. You look at Otto Lopez over his last 15 games, he's hitting 288, has a 702 OPS, which, while not conducive for a number 3 hitter, and we'll get to that, has been better. Xavier Edwards over his last 15 games, 310 batting average, 394 on base percentage, which is really what you're looking for from him over his last 15, and starting to steal bags again. I think that's going to make a big difference for him and for this Marlins offense at large. Dane Myers over his last 15 games just continues to rake 353 average, 400 on base, 490 slug. I don't know why he continually hits 9th in this order, but Dane Myers just, again, continues to be one of the best stories on this team, one of the best players on this team. He is your best hitter in 2025, Dane Myers, and he hits 9th. And I can't really make sense of it at this point. You've also got Liam Hicks over his last 15 games, 289 batter, 400 on base, 368 slug, 768 OPS. He's giving you not a ton of slugging, which we knew about Hicks. He's not going to give you a ton of homers, a ton of extra base hits, but he's just always on base. He has a great approach at the plate, never overmatched, always has a plan, and it shows at the plate with him. Really, really mature approach at the dish for a guy that had not played above AA this season. And then Nick Fortes, how about that? I was talking about Nick Fortes potentially being DFA'd, I think either last week or 2 weeks ago. And over his last 15 games, he's hitting 316 with an 819 OPS. Fortes continuing to stay hot versus the Braves with a double on Sunday to help the Marlins win that game. So when you have 5 guys in the lineup like this that are really starting to hit well, and you've got other guys like Sanchez and Stowers who, while the numbers don't look really gaudy over the last 10, 15 games or so, I think you can see at the plate that they're starting to come around. Stowers homered on Sunday. He's had some extra base hits, drawn some walks. Sanchez, again, he's just hitting seeds all over the baseball field right now, and they're not always dropping, but he's hitting the ball really hard. He's got a pretty good approach at the plate of late, and the Marlins have, for the first time, really more, a really solid portion of guys kind of all hitting well at the same time, which is something that they really haven't had this year. It's something that they, quite frankly, doesn't feel like they've had over the last 4 or 5 years, with this team. But right now they're delivering on offense, at least for the most part. I mean, you've got other guys like Augustine Ramirez, who it really feels like right now, if he's not homering, uh, he's kind of striking out. He's scuffling at the plate a little bit. Uh, Eric Wagaman continues to be kind of just middling. I mean, we talk about him at the top of the rookie leaderboards in like hits and total bases and doubles, but he's played 70 games. He's played 25, 30 more games than the rest of the rookies in this in the National League this year. If the games were the same, he would not be up there. I don't see what the guy. I don't see him as anything more than like a platoon bench bat. Against lefties, he can play occasional first base, but he's not. On his best day, he's Garrett Cooper, and okay, I mean, sure, whatever, but I'm as your number 4 hitter, and again, we're going to talk about it, but I don't really see it with him. Heriberto Hernandez, he's been a pleasant surprise since being called up. He's been pretty solid of late as well with the bat. And so right now, this is probably as consistent as the Marlins have been here over this last 15 games or so. They've gone 8-8 over their last 16, including the series win against the Braves, including a sweep against the Nationals. You lose 2 out of 3 to the Rays, where if the umpiring had gone your way in a couple of those games, you may have swept the Rays. You lose 3 out of 4 to the Phillies, where if your manager doesn't decide to pull Edward Cabrera 6 1/3 innings into that game, I don't know, maybe things end up different because he was cruising. I understand he lets the first guy on, but then he strikes out the next batter, and he's at 81 pitches. And this is where I'm going to get into, Clayton McCollough a little bit, because really, I mean, the sentiment on the guy is awful. And I'm usually measured in how I approach these things, because I don't want to be the guy that's just wildly swinging back and forth in a pendulum on, oh, this guy's great, no, he sucks, no, he's great, no, he sucks. But I mean, Clayton McCollough, to this point, I don't think there's anybody that can say that he's done a great job. It's really not anybody that I think that can say he's done a good job to this point. Does he occasionally manage the bullpen well? He did on Sunday, sure. But you go back to things like going with Cade Gibson after Edward Cabrera because he's facing a lefty. And you're saying to yourself, well, he was cruising. And they ask him about it after the game, and he says, no, I have no regrets. And you could see how it affected Cabrera in the dugout. He was pissed. And rightfully so. He was pitching the best game of his season. And he got pulled when he clearly had more in the tank. And I can't tell you for sure whether it did or didn't cost the Marlins the game. But I think you can make a pretty good argument that it at least cost the Marlins a run in that inning. And that represented the time run in that game, in a game that you lost by 1. The other thing is your lineups. I mean, the Marlins are pro analytics, and I am too. Listen, if the numbers bear out that, hey, this guy really can't hit curveballs, and you're playing and you're facing a pitcher that throws a really good curveball, yeah, okay, bench that guy, fine. Numbers bear it out, can't argue with that. But I don't know what numbers bear out that your best 3-4 combination is Otto Lopez and Eric Wagaman. I just don't. Otto, for as much as I like Otto, and I really like Otto. Like, I think he's a good player. Even if he is, maybe just a little below average with the bat for the most part. I think he's at least on par with what you had with Miguel Rojas, maybe a little bit better. Um, and he's your 3 hitter. And it's not like you don't have options. This isn't the Marlins where it's, oh well, everybody else in the lineup sucks, so who cares? No, you've got Stowers, you've got Hicks, you've got Myers, you've got right now Fortes. I mean, you've got other options that you could be hitting in that spot, and it's cost them. I was watching the game on Saturday. How often did the Marlins get? And it was the top of the order. They got runners in scoring position, less than 2 outs, and you've got Lopez and Wagaman coming up, and they're just not getting the job done. I mean, they're guys with sub 700 OPSs for a reason. And so I don't understand why those guys have to be in the middle of your order. I don't know what analytics tell you to do that. I don't think they exist, quite frankly. So I don't want to say a guy's on the hot seat 76 games into a season or anything like that, but man, I mean, part of me really kind of does feel like that the front office maybe didn't think that they were going to be as competitive and as scrappy as they are this season, because and I understand he was like their 5th option, right? I know that there were a lot of guys that didn't want the job at first, but it really, I mean, he does feel like a bit of a lame duck manager. He feels like a guy that was hired because no one else was willing to take the job. And listen, I'm sure he's a nice guy, and I'm happy for him that he's going to get to manage he's going to get to coach in the All-Star game. And that's awesome for him as a person, and I'm glad that I'm glad for him personally that he's getting this opportunity to manage the Marlins. But it's the little things. Like, I mean, it's not that hard to set a lineup with your best hitters at the top of the order. It's just not. Listen, if you want to save a guy to hit 8 or 9 because you want to set up, the turn of your order, you can use Otto Lopez for that. You can use Javier Sodoa for that when he plays. Those are the guys that you do that with. You don't do that with Dane Myers. You bring in you have Dane Myers hit when there are runners on bases, and you give him opportunities to get more at bats because he is the best hitter on your team currently. That's what you do. And again, I normally am not the person that's like, hey, this is what the manager should do. I disagree with what he did here and what he did here, but it's just really rudimentary stuff. Like, have your best hitters hit at the top of the order. Give your relievers consistent roles. I think having Henriquez go from 9th inning guy to all of a sudden he's your bulk inning guy in early to middle portions of games, and now he's the 9th inning guy again. It's just, I do think that affects a guy, because I think Henriquez, and I can't get inside of his head, but if I'm a player, I'm like, okay, well, I had this role, and now I'm seemingly demoted, even though I was performing well, because he didn't do anything to lose that privilege of pitching at the end of games. Now, is it as simple as maybe they wanted to showcase Voucher as a closer for other teams? Sure. I mean, that's probably what it is. And I'm going to be generous in that, and I'm going to say that that's likely what it is, because I think that's what it is. But that doesn't mean he can't be a 7th, 8th inning guy. He doesn't have to turn into, Tyler Phillips coming in the 4th inning here. So I don't understand that. But I do think that we'll be having that conversation at the end of the year as to whether or not it's time for the Marlins to kind of transition into another voice in the clubhouse, as they hopefully prepare to turn that corner for good, because I do not think that they're that far off. I don't. And I know that's going to get people up in arms. I know that they're 14 games under 500, 76 games into the season. But I think when you look at the foundation that they have right now and you look at the moves they can make, and I think even if they do sell off, I don't think that the players that they're selling off are really part of your long-term core. So I think you can live with that. And I think you can still be I think you can make a run at 80 wins next season if you play your cards right with this team, with Ryan Weathers returning, with Braxton Garrett returning, with Yuri Perez in the rotation, maybe with Jansen Junk in the rotation. I don't know. But I think that there's the bones there for a decent team, given what you have in the lineup right now, what you have in the rotation, and their ability to just kind of find bullpen guys. I mean, it's been a revolving door there, but they've been successful at it for the last 2-3 years at just churning out, really solid relievers. If there's one thing that this organization can do, it's absolutely that. But I do want to touch on just one final really positive thing, because I know that I kind of went on a diatribe there over the last 8 minutes or so, and that's going to be Jansen Junk. The whispers kind of started with him starting when he went 5 2/3 scoreless against the Phillies. Was it against the? Yeah, I believe it was against the Phillies. And he turns in a really solid start against the Braves. 5 innings, 1 earned run, 5 strikeouts, no walks. Junk this season in about 27 innings. He's 2-0, pitched to a 2.60 ERA, has a 1.01 WHIP, and a 12.5 strikeout to walk ratio. Long story short, the guy doesn't walk anyone. And then on top of that, he gets swings and misses. The curveball is really nice. He's a guy that is more of a pitcher, but he's got 95, 96 in his bag. Right now, just everything kind of points to him being a really, really solid find for this team. Now, I get it. Only 27 innings in. Small sample size theater here. We'll see how things look over time. But I think right now, you have to keep him in your rotation. Even if Meyer returns, even if Weathers returns, right now I would keep Jansen Junk in my rotation, and he's not a free agent until 2031. And so, this may be a situation where, we talk about Bendix having found guys at a discounted rate. You think of an Otto Lopez, you think of picking up Kyle Stowers as a throw-in in the Trevor Rogers deal. Jansen Junk could be that next guy for this organization, and it's becoming a bit of a theme for them in a positive way. They've done it with Junk. They're doing it with Henriquez too. And this is just how you kind of build. It's along the margins, in addition to, hopefully, they have the 7th pick in the draft next month, which we'll see during the All-Star break what they decide to do at 7. But this is how you kind of build. You find those guys on the ancillary, and then you build through the draft, and you find your main guys. But Jansen Junk, definitely a really good story to watch, and potentially gives the Marlins a really solid quartet in the rotation between Sandy, Yuri, Cabrera, and him to start the rotation. Quantrill, whatever, he's your stock number 5 starter, 5 innings, 3-4 earned runs. He's been steady over the last month and a half, and that's all you can ask for. But the Marlins will go on a road trip this week, 3 against San Francisco and then 3 against Arizona. It'll be interesting to see how they perform on the road, as they had a pretty good homestand here in their last 7 at Lone Depot. So we'll see if that can carry over for the Marlins. And that has been enough for me today. I will see you guys next week. Make sure to keep watching, keep paying attention, because I will keep churning out this content for you guys. We will see you next time. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It really does help grow what we do here at 5 Reasons Sports YouTube Network. Lots of stuff going on in the sports world. Still covering the Panthers' endless celebration. The Inter Miami in the FIFA Club World Cup. the Miami Hurricanes on the recruiting trail, the Miami Heat as they drive their fan base endlessly crazy by pursuing and then not getting these stars, even though it may not have been a great idea to pursue them in the first place, but that's for another podcast. And the Miami Dolphins, as training camp does open up in the next 5-6 weeks, we will have it all covered for you. So I will see you next time. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you then.